In 1982, 5 armed men stormed into a packed diner on Long Island. It was late, but the place was still buzzing. Over 70 people inside, finishing their meals, chatting, laughing. No one knew what was coming. The men raised their guns and shouted that it was a robbery. Anyone who didn't listen would be shot. The gunmen moved quickly, demanding wallets, purses, jewelry, anything of value. They weren't just organized, they were ruthless. But then, just when everyone thought it was over, things took a much darker turn. The attackers ordered the hostages to strip, and then, at gunpoint, forced them to do things I can't even talk about on TikTok. The level of humiliation and violence that night left scars no one would ever forget. The case sparked outrage across Long Island. Police launched an intensive investigation, collecting statements from dozens of witnesses and scouring for clues. It didn't take long. Within weeks, all 5 suspects were arrested. They were charged with 819 counts of armed robbery, assault, abuse, and more. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. Each man was found guilty, and each one received a prison sentence that ensured they'd be locked away for decades.
No black girls allowed on Epstein Island? Here's why. Jeff gave in at some point and told him, yes, I'll find some friends. Jeff wanted young, fresh girls, virgins. He told, don't bring me any N-words. Never ever brought any friends. At this point in the interview, attorney Barry advised the following. At Epstein's request, she at times met people on the beach and may have told them something to the effect of, if you want to party, go to Epstein's. Following statement. Shook her shoulders and head in the affirmative. Clarified that after what Jeff had done to her, she did not want it, the grapes and actual assaults, to be repeated. And she decided finding other girls for him, strangers she found in town, might spare her more abuse.
When it comes to true crime, do you know what one single moment in time replays in my mind? I'd say probably once a week. What Paul Murdaugh must have been thinking after his father shot him the first time, and then to watch his dad point the shotgun back up at his head and shoot again. You have this 22-year-old who has lived an insanely privileged life. And even during the trial, you don't hear about abuse within the family. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You hear about how much Alec Murdaugh loved his family. And then Paul walks into that little feed room and his father, the man he trusts most in the world, shoots him. But the bullet doesn't kill him. And then Paul looks over to see what the hell just happened, locks eyes with his father, who then raises the shotgun up at his head and pulls the trigger. Like, what a betrayal. And not to mention Maggie, hearing 2 gunshots, comes running out of the kennel to see her son's head literally taken off and her husband standing there with the gun. And she comprehended what was going on, which is when Alec Murdaugh shot and killed her too.
One thing I've always found interesting about jesters is people always say they spoke truth to power and they could make jokes to the king that others could not. For example, there was a jester who during a drought apparently made a joke to the king that was like, the taxes are so high here even the rain won't come. And apparently the king liked the joke so much he ended up lowering the taxes and it rained. But one thing people don't talk about is a lot of jesters just had mental disabilities, which you could take to mean that kings were just cruel and would laugh at people for the wrong reasons. But I like to think they just found a loophole in the whole system where they were like, yeah, this guy will speak truth to power. Yeah, he tells me all the things I'm doing wrong. Super funny and insightful. Also, the first ever female jester was Jane Fool. And you might be thinking, who was this woke king to have a lady jester? Well, it was Henry VIII. The guy that had like 6 wives, so I guess that means he was just like, yeah,
she's hot. I mean, she's hilarious. Put bells on her and get her in here.
Also, she apparently had Down syndrome, so.
Scientists have discovered black holes in the ocean. And if anything, no matter how large, gets sucked into the vortex, it is physically impossible for it to escape. There are toxic lakes and rivers on the bottom of the ocean. If a human or fish swam into it by accident, which is very easy to do, then you would immediately be pickled and dropped to the bottom. Every year, for some unknown reason, thousands thousands of sharks gather in a completely empty space in the ocean. No one knows why. They stay for months and then they swim deeper than we can follow, and we don't know what's going on. One drop of ocean water can contain 1 million viruses. For almost 30 years, scientists have heard the sound so loud it can be heard through the entire Pacific Ocean, and we don't know where it's coming from. It's seasonal though, so it's not like an earthquake or something. There's something called a ghost shark, and it looks like it was stitched together by a 5-year-old. There's a gravity hole in the Indian Ocean that's 1 million square miles wide. This anomaly causes the ocean to dip by 300 feet. Just a big old dent out there in the ocean. The world's largest waterfall is under the ocean.
Let's talk about celebrities who are either not very good people or who have done some pretty bad things, some of which you might not even know about. Part 4. And as promised, because you've all been going off in the comments saying that I'm baiting you all out, today we're covering Morgan Freeman. I'm going to preface this segment by saying that Morgan Freeman was originally on my poster for this series because it is heavily rumoured that he married his step-granddaughter, whom he adopted after being with her mother. Very confusing, I know. However, I am true to my word, and when I have done digging on this subject, it was never actually proven. There was an incident where the step-granddaughter was actually murdered, and the man who murdered her claimed that she told him that Morgan and her had a sexually inappropriate relationship. But this was never confirmed, it was denied. So think of that what you will. Nonetheless, when I did some digging into Morgan Freeman, there was other controversies that I can now speak about. In 2018, news company CNN published a report detailing accusations from 8 women and several witnesses who described a pattern of inappropriate behaviour from Morgan Freeman towards women on movie sets, during press junkets, and at his production company, Revelations Entertainment. The nature of the allegations included asking women to do certain things for them, like twirl, show off their bodies, unwanted comments about women's bodies, unwanted touching, and particular questions about their underwear. CNN investigated and spoke to 16 women, 8 of which confirmed that they actually had these things happen to them. 8 of them claimed that they witnessed these things happening. The women alleged that the work environment at his production company was extremely toxic and that the female staff knew not to wear clothes that would show their bodies if Freeman was expected at the premises. Initially, Freeman's lawyers demanded a retraction from CNN and called the report a hit piece. However, the retraction never happened, and Morgan Freeman then apologised for making anyone feel uncomfortable or disrespected and stated that it was not his intent. And to me, you don't apologise for something that you didn't do. It's hard to know where to begin with this one, but let's talk about Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson has had an extremely successful career in front of and behind the cameras since he started working in Hollywood in the 1970s. He is best known for roles in Mad Max, Lethal Weapon, Braveheart, Signs, and a lot more. However, there are a lengthy list of problems with Mel Gibson. Gibson is well known for being an absolutely raging alcoholic who has had a string of DUIs starting from the 80s right the way up till the 2010s. From the 90s onwards, Mel Gibson has been consistently and repeatedly accused of making extremely homophobic and anti-Semitic remarks. I'm not going to share the actual words that he said because they are vile and I'm not in the interest of upsetting people, but you can easily find the statements on Google. On multiple occasions where he was asked about said comments and statements, he in fact doubled down and ended up saying far worse than he had even originally said. Again, I don't even want to say them. And before you all get in my comments about people can change, blah, 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 he has since apologised. He blamed the disease of his alcoholism, which he stated that he's relapsed on. And then he did make a lengthy apology to the Jewish community for his anti-Semitic remarks. To my knowledge and what I could see, he's never apologised to the LGBTQ plus community. However, in 2010, audio recordings surfaced online of Gibson making abusive and racist remarks in conversation with his ex-girlfriend. In the clips, which again I'm not going to repeat or play here, you can find them on Google, he is heard to be saying some pretty horrifically abusive things to his then partner and referring to people with the N-word. Again, when he was questioned about these tapes, he didn't really do himself any favours, didn't really apologise, and put it down to being in a breakdown, said he was obviously being irrational and things were taken out of context. I'm not really sure how saying the N-word is taken out of context, but by the by. A year later in 2011, Mel Gibson pleaded no contest to misdemeanor battery after an investigation into an allegation of domestic abuse by the same girlfriend, who claimed that he hit her during an argument in 2010. She was thankfully able to obtain a restraining order because of the incident, and Gibson was put on probation for 3 years, as well as being ordered to attend 1 year of anger management counselling. He was also required to carry out some community service, although only 16 hours, and to pay $400 domestic violence fine. Gibson paid his ex-partner a sum of $750,000 and agreed to pay for the house that she and his daughter were living in until the daughter turns 18. Now that I've covered all 4 of these men, I will change my cover photo tomorrow. And again, as always, if there's anybody that you want me to cover, please pop it in the comments.
What would you do if your roommate came home and they were covered head to toe in fresh blood? I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Berry Bryant. Berry was born in March of 1978. She was raised alongside her little brother Ryan, who she was incredibly close to, by her single mother Sharon. Berry was described as a very normal, typical, all-American girl. She was a sweetheart. She was really, really popular and just the type of person that you wanted to be friends with, someone that you would naturally gravitate towards. And guaranteed, if you were lucky enough to be one of Berry's friends, she would make up the silliest nickname for you. She was very energetic, she enjoyed going out running, she did dancing lessons, she also played the saxophone, but her passion was for fashion. She was a whiz on the sewing machine. She just had the eye for fashion and she could make the most beautiful garments. Very inspired to work within the fashion industry, and she wanted to work in merchandising. So for her, the first step to getting there was getting herself through college. She managed to bag herself a scholarship at Northwest College in Powell, Wyoming. And she was so excited to start this next chapter in her life. In 1996, Berry was a freshman at the college and she was settling in really well. She met another girl named Jessie LeClaire and the two of them clicked and were immediate best friends. Berry would also get some attention from the other men on campus. However, not all of it was wanted attention. On the 4th of October 1996, Berry and Jessie attended a dance together, Berry proudly wearing a dress that she had made. The girls would end up at an afters dorm party and eventually ended up in someone's bedroom. There was a group of lots of people and everyone was chatting, drinking, laughing, just having a great time. Berry and Jessie were sat next to each other on the bed in this bedroom until Jessie got up. She told Berry she was going to see someone in another room, and so she left. Almost immediately, 19-year-old Levi Collin took Jessie's place next to Berry on the bed. The two weren't strangers. Levi was a man that Berry knew, although not someone I think she was necessarily comfortable with. Shortly after meeting Berry for what was believed the very first time, Levi told some of his friends that he was, quote, going to get her. On another occasion, Levi is actually in Berry's car. He sat in the front seat, Jessie is in the back, and Berry is driving when Levi starts having a life and taking the mick out of her because Berry was a virgin and he was a, quote, stud muffin. Berry didn't give him the reaction that he was looking for though. She said, yes, I am a virgin and I'm proud of that. After sitting down next to Berry on this bed, Levi tried to initiate sexual contact with her. He wanted to get with her and Berry wasn't having any of it. What happened following this is unclear. However, Levi was able to convince Berry to leave the party with him. She ended up inside of Levi's car. Levi kidnapped Berry, driving her 16 miles away, which she never would have went there willingly. She never would have left this party by herself in the dark in the middle of the night with this man. After pulling over, Berry got out of the car and she started storming away. She wanted to be nowhere near this man. She was going to walk all the way back to the dorm if she had to, but she was chased by Levi, who tackled her to the floor and viciously raped her. He then pulled out a hunting knife and in a frenzy began to ferociously stab and slash Berry all over her face and neck. She tried her best to fight off Levi, and this was proven with the condition that she was found in. She had tried to disarm Levi, to get the knife out of his hands so many times that her own fingers were described as shredded. Following the rape and murder, Levi went back to his own dorm room where he entered head to toe dripping in fresh red blood. His roommates asked him what on earth has happened, and Levi lied to them. He said that he had gotten into an altercation with another man and he ended up stabbing him. He would ask his roommates for help and they obliged, they agreed. Levi got himself cleaned up, so I'm guessing he took off the bloody clothes and went in the shower, and then he, along with his roommates, made their way back to the crime scene to retrieve the knife which he had left behind. Probably realising that once they got there, these roommates weren't going to see the body of a man, they were going to see the body of a young woman, Levi confessed to them what he had done to Berry. Thankfully, these roommates immediately jumped into action. They weren't going to back this man who had viciously murdered this woman, so they restrained him and all but delivered him to the police, driving directly to the station. Straight away, Levi started to spin a fabricated story to the police. He said that he and Berry were getting together, it was a consensual encounter, when out of nowhere, Berry started to attack him with a beer bottle. And because of that, he had to stab and then kill her in self-defense. Just as quick as he made up the lies, his story fell apart, and Levi would make an entire confession. Upon Ryan seeing Levi, his sister's murderer, for the first time, he had a haunting realization. He recognised Levi. When Ryan and Sharon were moving Berry into her uni accommodation, he remembered that Levi had been lingering around them and asking questions about Berry. It's likely that he had developed an obsession with her. He wanted her and he was going to get her by any means possible. And like a little boy, he couldn't take no for an answer. Levi Collin would plead guilty to the kidnapping, rape and murder of Berry Bryant. It's likely that he only pled guilty in order to escape the death penalty. For his charges, he would receive 3 life sentences.
Her son was murdered, and somehow that wasn't the worst part. The horror was only just beginning. It was 1989 in Arizona, and Deborah Milker was starting afresh. She was a beautiful 25-year-old woman and a mother to an adorable little 4-year-old son called Christopher. Christopher was just such a funny little kid. He was so charismatic for his age, he could make anyone laugh. Now, Deborah married Christopher's dad, Mark, back in 1984, but sadly the pair could not make it work, and just 4 years later, they got a divorce. Deborah was determined. She was like, I'm going to raise Christopher on my own, and I'm going to do a good job of it. But money was tight for Deborah, now a single mum, so she moved in with this family friend called Jim Stiers. He was a friend of her sister's, and he also had a little girl, so it was kind of like, we'll band together, we'll sort of join forces, and we'll look after our kids together. It felt like a good temporary living situation while Deborah figured stuff out. And on the 2nd of December, the kids got wind that Santa was going to be at the local shopping centre, and Christopher could not wait. He was begging. He was like, please take me to see Santa. Jim was like, do you know what? Fine. I'll take him, we'll come straight home. Like, he just wanted to stop him pestering. So imagine how terrifying it must have been when Deborah got a call later that afternoon to say that Christopher was missing. She was like, what do you mean he's missing? And Jim was like, well, I just popped into the toilet for a second, left him outside, came back out and he was gone. Firstly, you do not let a 4-year-old out of your sight. Deborah was frantically pulling out photos of Christopher from the family photo albums, desperately trying to show the police what he looked like to get the word out there. She was like, please, you have to find him. Now, officers made Jim retrace his footsteps and they noticed a couple of times that he mentioned this other guy, this mate called Roger Scott. He was like, yeah, I saw Roger Scott just before the kid went missing. So they got Roger in to be questioned too, just to see if he'd seen him anywhere. And what he said stunned the officers. After 14 hours of interrogation, he dropped a bombshell. Christopher was dead and he knew where the body was. But there was more. The detective came out of that interview room and said, Rogers told me Jim murdered the boy at the mum's request. Deborah's request. Everybody's heads were absolutely spinning at this point, so they pulled Deborah in for questioning too. We'll never know truly exactly what happened in that interview room because it was never recorded, which is totally wrong. Like, if you're interviewing somebody about a crime as serious as a potential murder, you obviously need to record it. That same detective came out of the room, this was Detective Saldate, and claimed Deborah had confessed. He was like, yep, she admitted she said she did it all for insurance money. $5,000. Now, who's going to kill their kid for $5,000? Let's be for real. So suddenly, Deborah was told, your son is murdered and you did it. And apparently you've confessed. And Deborah was like, what are you talking about? I have not confessed. I don't know how she stayed on her feet after that news. So Detective Saldate had basically made this whole thing up. I don't really know why, maybe to get the case closed. What do you guys think? It was absolutely horrible what he did to that woman. Now, Roger did end up leading police to the body, so they at least knew that Roger was telling the truth, that he did know where Christopher was. In this desert wash area in Phoenix was Christopher's little body. He had 3 bullet holes in his head. Very interestingly though, with the trial looming, Roger was offered a plea deal. If you testify against Deborah, we'll take the death penalty off the table. You won't get the death penalty. And Roger said no. He was like, I'm not testifying against her. And Jim ended up stating that the murder actually had nothing to do with Deborah. He said he bought a G off Roger that day. They went to the desert for some target practice, I don't know, and I also don't know why they took a kid. And apparently Roger was a very unstable individual. He was actually known for firing weapons at people in public. And I guess he fired the weapon at the little boy and killed him. And then they needed to cover this whole thing up. But they were all tried separately, so here is the really devastating part. Despite having literally no proof at all, no physical evidence that Deborah was anything to do with her son's death, she was found guilty. This so-called confession that people spoke of was kind of enough to taint her in the jury's eyes, I guess. And that woman sat in prison, not for 23 days, not for 23 weeks, 23 years, wrongfully convicted of killing her own son. Finally, in 2015, someone with a brain decided to look at this sketchy Detective Saldate guy and said, he seems a bit dodgy. He's actually got a history of committing perjury, lying in documentation, and just generally making shit up. Her conviction was finally overturned and she was free. But the most devastating part of returning home from prison for Deborah was when it dawned on her that her son wasn't going to be there.
There's a reason that she is the UK's longest serving female prisoner, having been incarcerated for over 3.5 decades. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Janet Newton. In February 1986, 30-year-old Maria married her third husband, a man named Malcolm. The couple lived together in Hartlepool with 2 of Maria's children from a previous marriage and their newborn, who was just a couple of days old on their wedding day. Malcolm was a man who was known to the local police. He had previous charges for violence, and this sort of behaviour carried over into his marriage. The relationship between Maria and Malcolm was described as stormy and violent, and after an incident in May 1986, their youngest child was taken away from them by social services after what was described as a serious incident. I don't really know what happened to the 2 older children because they're never really mentioned again. Following their child being removed remove from them, this caused the marriage to completely break down, and Malcolm actually kicked Maria out of the house. After kicking Maria out, Malcolm very quickly got into a relationship with another woman. This was 23-year-old building society worker Janet Newton, and Maria hated her for this. She was overcome with jealousy, fury, and resentment. She thought that this woman had taken her husband away from her, and so because of this, she started to despise Janet and did everything she could to intimidate her. She would stalk her, she would drive past Janet's house and sometimes just sit outside. She would write Janet threatening letters, posting them through the letterbox. She would verbally abuse Janet, screaming at her in the street if she saw her walking about. Maria really developed a very unhealthy, obsessive fixation on Janet. The hatred that she felt towards Janet, though, only heightened after Maria learned that Malcolm had proposed to Janet and moved her into their once family home. It's believed that Maria thought that this was some sort of tactic by Malcolm. He wanted it to appear to the social services that he was in a very stable family unit so he could get his child back. Almost immediately after learning of their engagement, Maria would go to a hardware shop and purchased a sheath knife. On the 18th of October 1986, only 2 days after the engagement, Maria would turn up outside of Malcolm and Janet's home on Grange Road and sat waiting for Janet to leave the house. Immediately upon sight, as soon as Janet walked out of the door, Maria launched a verbal attack on her, screaming and shouting. It carried out into the middle of the street, where Maria then pulled out the sheath knife and began to uncontrollably stab Janet in a frenzy. Janet would sustain at least 17 stab wounds, 2 of these piercing her heart. Maria then left Janet in the middle of the street, bleeding out, lay in a pool of her own blood. When Janet's body was eventually discovered by someone who was walking by, police arrived to the scene and they actually thought that Janet was a victim from a hit-and-run accident. That's how catastrophic her injuries were and just how much blood was surrounding her. These 17 stab wounds, however, quickly made them realise that this wasn't a hit and run. Through their investigation, police eventually made their way to Maria Pearson, who was arrested on suspicion of murder. Her trial began at Teesside Crown Court in 1987, and the defence's plan was to try and turn this entire case around and pin the murder on Malcolm, but when they realised that that wasn't going to work, they tried something else. They tried to put in a plea of diminished responsibility. At the time that Maria committed the murder, she was suffering from postnatal depression and she was actually recovering from a miscarriage. On the 24th of July 1987, the jury would deliver their verdict. They found Maria Pearson guilty of the murder of Janet Newton. For her sentence, she was handed an IPP, which isn't really a thing anymore, but it's sort of the equivalent of a life sentence. For Maria, she was given a minimum term of 12 years to serve before she can be considered for release. That 12 years has been and gone, and it is now over 35 years later, and Maria Pearson is still behind bars.
What happened to this girl is in my top 3 worst fears ever, and I'm not even exaggerating. Angela Hammond was 20 years old, engaged to the guy she'd grown up with, living in a small, quiet town in Missouri where nothing really ever happened. And on the night of April 4th, 1991, nothing was supposed to happen. Until it did. So earlier in the evening, Angela and Rob, her fiance, had spent some time at a cookout with a few friends. Nothing unusual, just a normal Friday night out, and when it was over, she dropped him off at his house at around 10 o'clock. Told him that she would call him in a couple of hours, and she headed back out. I'm not too sure where she headed, maybe to hang out with the girls again, who knows. But an hour later, just like she promised, Angie called him from a payphone in the middle of town. Now, standing outside in the middle of the night is basically asking for danger in today's time. But that wasn't the case for Angela's world. She lived in a small, quiet town where everybody knew everybody, and the worst thing that could happen to you was accidentally dating your third cousin. So she stood there at that payphone, laughing, talking to her fiance, just enjoying the last bit of her night before she had to go home. But then she said something. There's a truck that keeps circling the block. It's like an older model Ford, and it's green. I'm not worried or anything. I just don't know what they're doing. And for a minute, it really does seem like nothing. Just a truck on a quiet street. Rob isn't worried. Angie isn't worried. So they just keep talking. But then the truck slows down right in front of her. It pulls over and it parks next to the phone booth, and the door opens. The man who steps out is this big bearded guy with glasses, overalls, and he walks straight over to the bank of payphones right beside Angela and picks one up. And Angela, still on the phone with Rob, is watching him out of the corner of her eye, describing everything in real time. Her voice is calm, almost casual, and then she notices the flashlight. He pulled out a flashlight and he's looking at something in the dark, something she can't quite make out. So Rob tells her, just ask the guy if he needs to use the phone. Maybe the one that he picked was broken. So she does. She leans over and asks the man if he needs to use the phone, but the man just looks at her and says, no, it's okay. I'll just try again in a minute. And so Angela turns back to Rob, but the man is still there, still not using any of the phones, just standing there. But she minds her own business and she keeps talking to him. She's telling Rob about how much, and then a scream tears through the phone. The most harrowing sound Rob has ever heard. And before he can even get her name out, before he can ask if she's okay, the line goes dead. Before Rob could even consciously decide to move, his body is running straight out the front door. He's in his car. He's absolutely flooring it towards that payphone as fast as he could go. And he's probably thinking, 7 blocks, that's it. She's 7 blocks away. I know exactly where she is. I will find you, Angela. And then all of a sudden, a pickup truck comes blasting past him in the other direction, going way too fast. And before Rob could even fully process what he's looking at, somebody inside that truck leans out the window and screams his name. Robin! And so he knows before the word even finishes leaving her mouth. That's Angela. Rob desperately throws the car into reverse. He spins around and he goes. He gets the truck back into his sights. He's chasing it through the streets of Clinton. He can see the brake lights. He is right there. He is 2 miles behind it. He has it. He is not letting this go. And then he feels it. The car losing power underneath him, because that reverse, that hard, panicked, everything on the line reverse, it damaged the transmission and now it's dying. He can feel his car slowing down as he hopelessly stares at the pickup truck speeding up. And within a matter of seconds, the truck pulls off the road into the dark, and all Rob can see is the dust cloud it left behind. He sat there in this car for God knows how long, staring at the dark, blaming himself. Why did you give out? I was right there. I was right behind him. She was right there. 2 miles. He had the guy for 2 miles, and then his car died, the man disappeared, and Angela was gone. Wow, that was heavy. Okay. When word gets out that Angela Hammond had been taken, the entire town turned itself inside out. Police, civilians, search parties combing every road on foot and from air. Investigators are running every registered vehicle, matching the description of what Rob reported. Late 60s, 2-towed Ford pickup, and they came up with 1,600 possibilities. 1,600 trucks that get checked one by one, and not a single one matches. And so at a certain point, when the search starts coming up cold, and the only person who could actually place that truck at the scene is Rob himself, the investigation turns in a direction that Rob probably saw coming, because, it always does. People start wondering if maybe the fiance had something to do with it. So the police department start looking closely at Rob's story, and within a week, they clear him completely. Angela's mother, Marcia Cook, said that she never once doubted him for a second. She'd known the kid his entire life, but Rob still carries it with him anyways, because the thing he can't shake isn't whether people blame him, it's that he was 2 miles behind that truck. He was almost there. He almost reached her. And then he wasn't. As of right now, no truck was ever found. No suspect has been publicly named, and Rob Schaefer grows up and keeps living in a world where he still doesn't know what happened to the woman that he loved at 20 years old. I truly hope that one day her family can get some answers. That is all for today. Please be cautious, be aware of your surroundings, carry protection. I love you guys. Mwah. Group hug.